Greetings and welcome to another episode of Pop's Collection. I'm Ron Tweedy, joining me is Pops, and today we're going to be talking about The Punisher.
Hi everybody. The 2004 Punisher. There was actually one before that. I'm not really sure if it got into the theaters. I think it was direct to video, but I'm not real positive.
I was going to ask you about that actually, because I know... Yeah, is that 1989 one part of your collection?
With Dolph Lundgren.
Do you have that one?
I do own it, yes.
Wow, okay. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Really? Wow. Well, I'll have to bring it up and maybe we could make our way through that. Had, some big names. Dolph Lundgren at the time was a big name, and Louis Gossett Jr.
Right.
Was involved in it. It was put out by Artisan, as was this one.
Okay.
But actually, this was Artisan's final production because they were bought out by Lionsgate.
Yeah.
And actually, Lionsgate, had their name and everything involved with this, and really, they weren't involved in this movie at all.
Okay.
So, Punisher, just the idea of the character, just by that, it gets an R rating. You know, it's not your typical superhero, story or comic book.
Well, I think you kind of have to reframe it. He's not, I would not consider him a superhero, number one, for two different reasons. Number one, he doesn't have any special powers. But secondarily, this is a second or a subclass called an anti-hero. And, an anti-hero is not necessarily a virtuous person, but you still want to root for him because he's still, against evil in some form.
Yes, that's kind of his thing. And as a matter of fact, he started out as a bad guy.
Yep.
In the Spider-Man comics.
Yep, and let me show you what that looks like, because I did get some of that stuff. So,
oh, good.
I guess because honestly, this is the more interesting part of the podcast where we're going to talk about the Punisher, the character, not the movie. This is way more, I think, better. Your time is spent better here. So yeah, let's take a look just at a couple of screenshots at what the origins. And so you can see here, this is the first appearance of the Punisher right on the front cover of Amazing Spider-Man. This is in 1974. And, very much, the costume, the design is very evocative and very consistent with what he looks like currently. But you could see that, like you said, he was targeting Spider-Man.
Yes, that's because he was kind of a sub-villain for this guy, the Jackal.
Right. Yeah, you can see here.
Creature.
He's fighting with Spider-Man. Jackal is this little green character here.
Yes.
So, yes, Baby Spider-Man, this is like, early to mid-70s. Vintage Spider-Man, so you can definitely tell from an action standpoint, it looks good, because Spider-Man is definitely one of they spend the most time on the Spider-Man stories because they're the most popular. So, but you can see he's got black boots in this one, but he's still got the skull on the chest and everything. So,
yes, and it was interesting. What the nice thing about the DVD with this one is that I did get. In this version, a lot of extras that explained a lot of the things in the movie that were very interesting.
Sure.
And I also got this nice little comic book. I don't know if you could see that.
Okay. Yeah.
But you could see the drawing of it. This is the later date from that which the movies were taking care of.
Share it again because now I've stopped sharing my screen, so the picture will be bigger. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And,
There you
and
go.
you could see that the cover art is really, really good in this.
Hmm.
Which that's what I was sharing with you the other day, that the gentleman that does the cover art, Tim
Right.
Bradstreet,
Right. Yeah.
he actually, uh, the main character, the actor in this, Thomas Jane,
Yeah.
he actually turned down the role of Punisher until he kind of started looking at the Broad Street artwork,
Okay.
and then it kind of enticed him to read the stories. And once he did that,
Yeah.
he chose to take the role. But
Okay.
that was a whole other storyline because
Yeah.
as he was a villain with Spider-Man, we did get towards the end of that when because Punisher thought that Spider-Man was a bad guy.
Right. Which, with how Jameson always frames him at the Bugle, of course, you would get that impression. So,
That's right. But Jackal also uh, convinced him that he
yeah.
was a bad guy.
But before we get to the 2000 series, I think I want to just point to year one as well, because that was also a piece of source material for the film.
Yes.
So we had this one, and honestly, when I started looking at it, reading it, I really got vibes of Batman Year One that Frank Miller did back in the day. Obviously, the covers of this 4-issue miniseries, and again, it's 4 issues, just like Batman Year One was, just really evocative and like almost like Renaissance style glass stained pictures you get on the front cover, which is very different than what's actually inside the cover.
Yes.
It's an origin story, but what I love about this one is that you can tell from the clothes and the cars and everything, this is actually a period piece. This is not something that's taking place in the 90s when it was written. It actually is taking place in the 70s, back when the Punisher was actually introduced. So you kind of get this retelling, but again, you get this interesting thing. And unfortunately, the movie doesn't really borrow a whole lot from this storyline. The you can get just a little bit here. This is issue number 4, and he goes through his little monologue he does towards the end, like his journal entry, and you can see
Yes.
like he's talking about all the different things as he's suiting up, just like in the film. And then towards the end of this last issue, a lot of the explosions and action things really kind of mirror what happens at the end when he tries to infiltrate the Saint building. So very, very similar, but that's about it. The rest of the origin story is completely different than year one. And then
Yes.
finally we'll go to the, like you said, the 2000 reboot, which is called Welcome Back, Frank. And I had to pick issue number 3 because it's got Daredevil in it, of course. So
Yes.
you got that.
And you can look at the picture
Yeah.
and see, like, compared to Frank Castle, Daredevil is like a wimp almost,
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of funny, the difference. But what I love about this one is that this right here, these visualizations where he's got him tied up and he's got a gun in his hand, that is straight from Daredevil season 2 on Netflix. So
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
way cooler. Your time would be better spent on that, I think. But this storyline is actually where we get the secondary characters. You got Joan here, and
Yes.
you got Dave and
Bumpo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that they appear in this comic. So again, there were small elements of this film that were ripped right out of the comics, which I respect. But overall, the actual movie itself, like I said, you would do better. You would spend your time better if you were just to watch Daredevil season 2. I'll just throw that out there.
Well, you can throw that out there all that you want. But I'm going to say that this film was the director, Jonathan Hensley,
Okay.
uh, or Hensley. That was his directorial debut, and he was basically known as a screenwriter before then.
Yeah, and I really do feel sorry for um, him as a filmmaker, because I know that because I like to frame it in its proper context. So you had this film itself came out in April of 2004, which was a year after we had Daredevil come out.
X2.
And
Oh
Daredevil.
yeah, and X2.
I was thinking more about Daredevil because it kind of places it in a similar universe.
That's true. That is true.
So you have uh, a lot of money, a lot of star power behind that film, and we talked about how uh, much how good that movie actually is. And this one, I feel that it would be as good as that Daredevil movie if it had the same amount of budget and they had the same amount of time to shoot it in. Because that's the thing, they gave them like a terrible, not I mean a real shoestring budget.
33 million was the total, and
Right,
nothing more.
right, compared to Daredevil, which I think they spent considerably more on.
Oh
And
yes, and the same thing with X2. X2 was 125 million.
right, so you have that, and then you only have 52 days for shooting.
That's
All.
correct.
That's all he had. So, with those things in mind, I think that it was bound to be not a good movie.
It had its moments. It actually had knowing these parameters that he had to deal with. He was smart enough to hire a storyboard artist, and all of the storyboard things that all the action scenes that he wanted, he had them all pre-done out so that they could, because they had to save time some way, so they had to have an idea of what their concepts were going to be.
Yeah.
And plus, with their budget, there was I don't know if you noticed, but there was no CG at all in this.
No, which is I think actually in its that's actually a positive for them.
Yes, I agree. For me, it was very much a positive. The fact that Jane did 90% of his stunts. The fact they made in the extras, they made a note of him actually training with Navy SEALs for 6 months before he came to portray the role, and that he had increased his muscle by 20 pounds. And
well, from a conditioning,
he played the part well, I think.
And from a conditioning standpoint, he definitely was fit, into shape, had a good physique. That part, agreed. That part was great. I don't think he was actually a very good fit from an acting standpoint. Then again, I've been spoiled by John Bernthal. As he is the Frank Castle of in my mind. I can't picture anybody better at this point. Although I haven't seen Dolph Lundgren do it, but
and we also have somebody else that we need to check out too.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, because I do think that I also want to talk about the actual origin story of Frank Castle, or the official one, and then we'll talk about the one that's in this one. So you have, Frank Castle.
In year one you would call that the origin, right?
I would, yeah. Vietnam veteran, obviously, tragically, his family's murdered in front of him. He survives, and so because of that, he takes, pretty much a spirit of vengeance, to borrow another Marvel Heroes moniker, to take out crime family. So his whole thing is that where the human level justice fails, he's the catch-all. He's the one that actually ends up giving justice where the justice system has failed. So that's kind of the whole thing behind it. And so that part is consistent with this version of Frank Castle. What is not consistent is that he does not have He's got some military background, but that's not really the real crux of it. It's more he is a FBI drug agent, and so that's kind of how the origin story starts. That's the reason why his family's killed, because of revenge of what he did in the FBI. And to me, I find that to be a little less compelling origin. We saw in the Netflix series it wasn't Vietnam, but it was the Gulf War, which not the Gulf War, Afghanistan, right? So
Yes.
that was again, what makes Frank Castle, I think, a compelling or a sympathetic anti-hero is that he is not just processing the trauma of losing his family. He's also doing that in the midst of processing the trauma of war. And so we don't really get that in this film. We kind of just get like a little bit of a throwaway line there about it. But, the fact is that you have someone who has fundamentally experienced something that was life altering. And that is the reason why it doesn't necessarily justify what he does, but it definitely explains what he does. And I think that you kind of need that in order to have this character story work out well. So.
Right. The only thing that gave you an inkling to that is when everybody thinks he's dead and he comes back
right
in this picture, and he's saying, hey, you guys haven't done anything. If you're not going to do anything, I'm going to deal with it. I've given you time for justice, and you chose not to do it.
Yeah.
Or you've just been unable to do it.
And that part, yeah, I think
I believe that was their explanation, or their.
Well, it is, but justice would not be the police taking the bad guys in. It would be this justice system, the court of law, convicting them and then sentencing them for their crimes. That's
right
where the justice is. So yeah. So I think actually that's the more interesting part of the story, from a biblical worldview standpoint. God has ordained the civil magistrate, governing authorities as the ones to carry out justice. And so there's no guarantee that justice system is going to work perfectly. In fact, we know we can depend on it not working perfectly because we live in a fallen world. So, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible, if the justice system fails here, don't worry, go ahead and get justice for yourself. It actually says the opposite. It says, leave vengeance to God. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord, right?
Yes.
And so
yes.
we have a God who knows, he knows that's the thing. It's both two things. Number one, we know that we serve a God that is perfectly just, and that all will be justified at the end. He'll come down and he'll be the righteous judge over all. We know, we have hope in that. That's the first thing. But doubly, we also have a God who suffered the ultimate injustice, who came to earth, was tried for crimes he didn't commit, suffered the ultimate penalty of death. And so he not only will he come back and do what is right, and he'll make things right, but he also has suffered the ultimate injustice, and so he identifies with us when we experience injustice too. So, both of those things, as a Christian, that's how we should be thinking about how justice works on earth, and know that where there is injustice and it looks like the bad guy got away, we know that God will ultimately come, and that bad guy's his sins will either be paid for in eternity, being damned, or they'll be nailed to the cross of Christ, and we can take comfort and hope when that happens. So that's how I think we should think about justice, and not, if something does fall through the crack, it's not on us to carry out that justice in this world. So
no, but we are human, and I think one of our faults is that patience.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes I can see that in this case, he just it wasn't happening quick enough for him.
Which ironically is, and they never explore any of this in the film, And I don't remember if they explored this at all in the Netflix series, but the funny thing is that like Matt Murdock, Frank Castle is also a Catholic, and so for both of these folks, and you kind of see that play off each other, particularly in Daredevil season 2. Just kind of their approaches to all that. So as a religious person, you would think that he would know all of those things, and then again, he acts inconsistently, just like Matt Murdock does. So anyway,
Yeah,
food for
that's
thought.
true. That is true. Well, that again, I believe that, basically the time restraints and the budget alleviated them exploring certain things.
Sure.
I felt, like you said, the film with a bigger budget and a little bit more time, I think, shooting time, I think they could have done something better with it. They had a good idea. They just,
Yeah.
it was kind of like Swiss cheese. There were too many holes in it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think obviously it suffered from those shortcomings. If they spent more time on the script, I think they needed that as well, particularly with the a lot of the writing. Uh, you know, there's that issue, and then again, if they had like double of the time that they had before, they could actually the director could get the right takes on the delivery of some of those things, and it probably would have been a little bit better. And they probably could have used a better editor because the movie's way too long for what it is.
And believe it or not, they cut more than 25 minutes out of that.
I believe it.
Yes, because they had a whole subplot uh, about Castle.
Yeah.
Frank, his buddy
Yeah.
in the FBI, was the guy that told Saint about that
Yeah.
it was him, and that he's still living.
Right.
And they had a whole subplot about Castle finding out about that.
Right.
And that was all that stuff was totally cut.
Right. Right. So yeah,
which for a good reason, because I mean, this thing was just a little over 2 hours,
Right.
but
Right.
I think that it could have been done better almost at a 90-minute, or maybe just a little bit longer than that,
Yeah, 100%.
The story suffered a lot because it is basically a comic book movie.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, anti-hero. And I believe that a lot of the critics and the people were expecting it to be something similar to Daredevil or X2 at the time.
Sure.
And unfortunately, not even close.
Right.
But I do have to say, their stunts and the explosions and all those that they did,
Yeah.
The sets that they built, we didn't mention it, but this whole movie was shot entirely in Tampa, Florida.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing. So
the whole movie. So
Florida man. Yep.
When it was supposed to be Puerto Rico, it was really in Tampa.
Right. The Frank Castle story is actually supposed to be New York, so that was the other thing that was a very big difference. Now, not necessarily that's a huge deal breaker for me. In fact, I prefer, having a little bit more of a diverse location of these superhero stories. A lot of times we just get urban environments because that's where these writers are living when they're writing these stories. I get it, but it would be nice to see, change of scenery. Which Tampa. It's not a terrible idea. It's not the greatest place in the world, which is perfect for the backdrop for that.
Right. Well, it was good for the director and the crew and everything, because at the time that they were filming this, downtown Tampa, pretty much closes after 5 o'clock. The people that work in city.
Yeah.
They go home to the suburbs.
Right.
So it's pretty much dead and vacant for them. So they were able to shoot a lot on the weekends and stuff, and after hours, because nobody was there.
Right.
So it gave them that. The one drawback is Florida, and especially in the West Coast, there's a lot of rain.
Yeah.
So they had to deal with that a lot,
Yeah.
surprisingly.
Yeah.
But, I've got to say that I did enjoy the movie. I think I enjoyed it because of the stunts, definitely because of Kevin Nash.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think, the highlight of the film to me. Just the whole scene of Big Daddy Cool, as bleached blonde hair, which I thought was different than what I
Right.
normally
Was
see.
that crazy? And no beard. And
Yeah, that part was not. But you could definitely tell that fight scene in particular was perfect for him, I should say. He really, you could definitely tell he used his skills as a person that is in sports entertainment. There's a lot of bleed over between those two, and I thought,
yes,
I like to compare it to Tobey Maguire versus Randy Savage in the first Spider-Man movie. That one was okay, but this, I have
much
to say,
better.
yeah, Kevin Nash just did a really good job despite the rest of the film.
And him and Thomas Jane, they both
Yeah.
Did all their stunts on that. Everything,
Yeah.
throwing him through the wall, throwing
Right.
Punisher through the wall.
Yeah.
All that was not done by extras,
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
And going down the stairs, all that stuff. There was a whole big special about all of the stunts and everything.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. It really piqued my pleasure of the movie that much more, knowing that,
yeah,
hey, this wasn't a CG thing.
Right.
It wasn't, a stunt double. It was the real guys, and it made that movie much more enjoyable than it actually was when I watched it the first time.
Yeah, I can appreciate those things, but the movie itself actually for me was really hard to get through because everything else around it was pretty bad.
Yes. What did you think of John Travolta as the villain, as the Saint?
That was probably the worst John Travolta performance I've ever seen. He doesn't look right. There's something weird about the way he looks, and his acting is pretty poor in this one.
In this particular film, yes.
Yeah. So I don't get it. It was weird.
Oh, it was just crazy because they did have some big name stars in this, and I think they weren't utilized to their best potential in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know about Frank Castle planning a whole elaborate thing to force Saint to kill his best friend and his wife.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that subplot to the story, or whatever you want to call it, I just felt that it was, a little, I don't know, it was weird. To me, that's not how the Punisher operates,
Yeah, you're probably right about that. It's kind of a Shakespearean thing, it reminds me of the story.
Well, Jonathan Hensleigh was inspired by, or he did a little homage to Othello.
I was thinking it was more like Titus Andronicus, the whole revenge piece, but I guess. But anyway.
Well, I mean, that's what he said.
Yeah, I know. I just don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, you did see Shakespeare in it.
Yeah, but not Othello.
Yes, it was actually, to me, just the opposite, of Othello. Frank being the vengeful guy, mm-hmm. It was different.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep. So
I liked they had Roy Schreider play his father,
Yeah.
uh, another big name guy, and he gets this like little part, you know, and he's dead, within the first half hour.
Yeah. Yeah, but thankfully this time he wasn't facing a shark, because that would have been a lot more complicated.
He was on the water though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so uh yes, we talked about the original origin story, and it was his wife.
Yeah.
I think the very original version was it his wife and daughter.
He has two kids. He has a daughter and a son.
Okay, so it was, and whereas in this version, it was his whole family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
which was kind of, like you said, bizarre.
yeah, I just,
Yeah.
although hey, it went to the, I guess the lack of respect for life by the mafia or the gangs or whatever.
Right.
But they supposedly killed him.
Yeah.
And that didn't work.
Right.
Well, anything else you want to say about this?
No, like I said, I like the story of the Punisher. I like the character, sort of. Uh, I like all the stuff around this movie. I don't like this movie. That's pretty much all I got to say.
Wow. Well, um, I have to say that I kind of, what I enjoyed about this is, like I said, the stunts and the explosions.
Right.
Knowing what I know background wise,
Yeah.
how it was done, it definitely made it good for me. I really enjoyed that part.
And that is one thing. Another thing I'll just observe, that from a realism standpoint, that a lot of the gun stuff and the explosion stuff is really unrealistic. I know that is appropriate because it's a comic book, and obviously everything is exaggerated, which totally get, but kind of took me out of the moment. Particularly the scene where at the family massacre, where they're shooting the guy, and they take like a long time setting up shooting the propane tank to blow it up with the guy. And I was like, in a normal movie that would be like 20 seconds at the most, and they spent like 2 minutes setting that up. I'm like, come on, guys, this is not the thing you should be focusing on.
Right. So, it was actually, the explosion was real, and if you saw how long it took them to get the guy in costume and all the heat protection and the fake stuff, when you saw all that, you were like, well, God, I guess they got to give this guy more than 20 seconds,
I guess.
He's spent all that time. I don't know either, but
yeah, I don't mind that. The stunt part of it's fine. It's just the story part of it,
getting into that.
It took so long.
He would, hey, if they are who they were, they would have known to blow up the tank a lot sooner than that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
And I will say that, there's a stereotype, and it comes from the what really popularized it was the YouTube channel Cinema Sins, where where the title of the film is said, and then it, the meme is that, like, roll credits, after he said it, so, but at the end, literally at the very end of this film, he's like, the Punisher, and it literally did start rolling credits, and I thought, this is the kind of movie we're watching right now. That's it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I do have to say that I think my favorite part was the guitar player.
Oh yeah, yeah. That guy, he's a country singer in real life, and
Yes, he is.
he has portrayed Johnny Cash. He really wanted to be Johnny Cash in this film, and yeah, that was interesting, but not
Yes,
interesting enough for me to remember to talk about it.
right. Well, so um, the chase scene with him,
Hmm.
and then he pulls out a gun, and Frank's laying on the ground and says, "Why would you bring a knife to a gunfight?" And he like just shoots a blade. I'm like, what? uh, but I thought, okay, good. And then you take off in his car, the bright green car.
Right, which I do have to say that that was some of the ridiculousness of some of those action films, stuff like that, I can appreciate, and I'm sure with the next Punisher film we'll look at, we'll have a lot of that. But those movie moments here were few and far between.
That is correct. Yes. And like we had talked about Kevin Nash, if you look at the comic version of the Russian and the Kevin Nash version,
Yeah,
it's like they're like doubles, you know?
yeah,
And I guess the thing that I really enjoyed was more the extras than the movie
right,
itself.
right.
Um, and I did enjoy learning about Tim
Yeah,
Bradstreet,
yeah, yeah,
because I really wasn't following the Punisher then.
yeah. I wasn't either, and I'm not the hugest fan of the art style inside the pages, but those covers are really striking. I
Oh,
have to
no
agree.
question.
Yeah,
And so much so, I got to tell you that they did hire him
hmm,
to do all of the movie posters
yeah, yeah. I can see
all
that.
over the world,
Yeah,
which he said was a huge, for him, it was really something pretty special that,
yeah.
everywhere around the world, people were seeing his artwork,
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah. He is an interesting artist.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not one that grew up with that style
Hmm.
of art
Yeah.
in comics.
Right.
And I really feel like he made the Punisher seem more humanistic, or,
Yeah. Really, it's more realistic. Yeah, I agree.
absolutely,
100%. Yeah.
So that's for me is a positive on this.
Sure.
All right. So uh, I'm going to say, thankfully, we're at the end pretty much,
Yeah, I agree.
except for the rating.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to give it a
And
rating.
I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to actually give it a good rating. I'm going to say that it's a 4,
Okay.
just under average.
Okay.
But I'm giving it the 4 because of no CG and all of the stunt work and the explosions. Like you said, even though not realistic, they did make them do best. And the best one was the last one with the car lot
Yeah.
that blew up into
Gosh.
the Punisher skeleton.
All right, we didn't even talk about that. The origin of the icon or whatever with the oh god, that was horrible.
Yes.
Ah,
Well,
that was
we can
bad.
get into the origin uh, with our next show if you'd like, as far
Yeah,
as the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
origin,
yeah, yeah. Well,
because that has
the skull thing. Yeah.
actually, there's been a few different origins on that
Yeah. Okay.
story.
All right. We'll talk about that next time. All right. So you gave it a 4. I'm giving it a 3. I wanted to give it a 2, but the fight scene with Kevin Nash, Big Daddy Cool, uh, you know, that was
Yes,
it made it go up an entire point for me just from that alone.
absolutely. Well, see, there you go.
Yeah.
Right? That was great. And I loved having Mystique in there with clothes on. So,
Yeah.
all
All right.
right, very good. All right, so next week, shall we do it?
Yeah, we're gonna cover Punisher Warzone, starring what's his name? Ray Stevenson. I was trying to think of I was trying to think of his character's name in the MCU. I should know this. He's one of the Warriors 3. And
Yeah, absolutely.
um,
Faldo or
no,
something.
Fandral is not. It's not Fandral. It's not Hogan. It's the third guy. Starts with the V. Volstagg, maybe.
Volstaff.
Yeah, Volstagg.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, anyway, we'll see you next week with Punisher Warzone. If you have any feedback, reach out to us via social media, and like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye and God bless.
Yeah. Goodbye and God bless. And if you're going to watch it before the show, I can tell you it is not kid friendly.
No, neither was this one. So.
Neither was this one. Yes.
All right. We'll see you next time. Bye.